all podcasters.
Yes.
All of these people, including my favorite, Becca Tobin.
Oh, yes.
Becca Tobin just sort of changed the dynamic of this show. She was so outrageous. If you don't know Becca Tobin, she's one of the Lady Gang podcast. She was on Glee for a long, long time. She told the greatest worst date story of all time. She just took things to a higher level at this show, and she just made it better. She's a podcaster. AJ's a podcaster. Dr. Drew, obviously, is a multiple podcaster. Jen Glantz, Joe Piazza, Jill Michaels. They're all podcasters.
Yes.
That helps as a guest.
Yeah.
It just does.
Yeah.
So if you want to get on this podcast, you should probably have a podcast. But they were all great, and look up all the episodes that they were on because they were all terrific. And they're curious people, and they're smart, and they're fearless, and they're ballsy, and they're not afraid to admit that they don't always have all the answers. And they never worry about asking the questions.
Yeah.
Like that is a good thing about an authentic guest. So hopefully you guys remember all of them. And if you're not, you can go look them up. And we're going to get back to more of this looking backwards, looking forward, and seeing where we're at right now, right after this. And we are back for the 300th episode of The Great Love Debate. And I brought back producer extraordinaire, the 2-time Emmy Award-winning Keiko.
Thank
She
you.
might be the 3-time Emmy Award-winning Keiko by the time we get her back on here.
Thank you.
We'll see. The 5 most downloaded episodes we have ever done. So I had to do some research on this because you have to pull the stats from a lot of different places. But I was curious. I was like, what are the most listened to of these 300? Some of them I could have guessed, and some of them I thought were on there because I remember them sort of going viral, and people would, and some of them were like, that was on the list? Okay.
I can't even imagine.
So I'm going to go in reverse order, and you tell me if you even remember these shows, because like I said, we've sliced this apple 300 different ways. The 5th most downloaded show we have ever done is GLD 104. So it's going back 196 episodes ago. And it was called Damn You, Taylor Swift. And I did that show in Seattle. There's nothing I remember about that episode. I'm sure it was fine. I think if you say anything about Taylor Swift in the title of your show, I think I upset the Swifties, and I think that got sent around, and good for the numbers and the advertising.
To be honest, I remember the title.
I remember the title.
I don't remember what it was about.
I don't remember what it was about either.
It better have mentioned those high-waisted pants that I hate.
It definitely mentioned that.
Oh
I
my
think
gosh.
that Taylor Swift is responsible for the
damn
dreadful
you, Taylor
high. So I think I said
Swift.
damn you. So anyway, that's the 5th most downloaded episode of this show. Number 4, and I'm going to put they're sort of, this was a 2-part episode, 133 and 134, what we called the dating commandments. I believe you were on those.
Yeah.
Keiko. Those were good. We stand by those. We later on, we added some dating amendments and we added some dating resolutions, but the dating commandments hold true. So if you've never listened to our 2 episode called the dating commandments, go back and refresh those, because those are really good. And obviously they were very popular because that is the 4th A and B most listened to episode.
Listen more than once. They were really terrific.
Yeah, they're good. Yeah. Click and save.
Click and save.
The 3rd most listened to episode of the Great Love Debate podcast with Brian Howie.
Yeah.
I'm Brian Howie.
Okay.
The worst cities to find love for 2019.
Oh, okay.
So for some reason, 2019, you were on that one because I went back and checked that out. That's number 222. I was particularly fired up about that one, and I took down a whole lot of places. So 2020 wasn't particularly, as good. In 2018 and 17, 16, all those, we do that every year. But the 2019 version of the worst cities to find love, and most of those cities were still on the 2020 and will always be on the list because they're all terrible. That was the 3rd most listened to episode of this show. Number 2, the 2nd most downloaded or listened to episode that we have ever done was another one that you were on, Keiko.
Okay.
The 23 questions that matter. Do you remember that one?
I love that one.
We even ran that one as a repeat. That was such a good one.
Yeah.
We've only done like 2 reruns, and that was one of them. The 23 questions that matter. 218. If you have not listened to that one, you print that out, and then you put a little Thousand Island dressing on it, and you eat it. You eat it in a bowl because you need to know the 23 questions that matter. That was the 2nd. So I'm glad that a lot of people listened to that because that, Lots of people listen to the show. So if that was the second most listened to one, that has been shared and listened to over and over and over. Good, because I'm proud of that one and I stand by that one.
Yeah, that's great.
Surprisingly, the number one most downloaded episode we've ever done of this show was not too long ago, according to these numbers. It must have been last year. It's number 268. So if this is number 300, it was 32 episodes, and it was called The 11 Exes You Date Along the Way. I did it myself. I don't know if you've ever been listened to that,
Oh
Keiko.
my gosh. Did I miss that one? I have to go
I don't
back.
know. It's called The 11 Exes You Date Along the Way, and it was my way of laying out that everybody has a lot of relationships, but there are 11 specific kinds that almost all of us have, and apparently exes, which we spent a lot of time on this podcast, really resonated, and the most downloaded episode of this show ever was called The 11 Exes You Date Along the Way.
Wow.
Who knew?
Yeah. Well, I always say that you break up with everyone except the last person you're with.
That's right.
So it's interesting to know that there are 11 kinds.
Yeah, people like that. People are like, because we got a lot of feedback on that episode too. So a lot of people are like, I'm glad to know that I'm not the only one with this portfolio of dating. It was really,
we all think about that. Why did I go out
who
with
am I
that
to
person?
toot my own horn? But I'm going to toot my own horn. It was pretty well thought out. I spent some time on it, and it made people feel better that we all have that.
Nice.
Awful.
I'm going to go back and listen
person,
to it.
That
Thank
awful
you.
leather jacketed high school boyfriend. Okay, the most memorable episodes for me.
Okay.
Most memorable. Well, this is different from the most listened to. This is about my taste, not your collective
Your
taste.
Your
the five that I liked.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Number one for me, not in terms of, this is a reverse order. So number 5 or number 1. I'm going to build up to the most. Was the Dr. Drew one, the first one when we had Dr. Drew on. Because I just respected his opinion, and he had a lot of interesting things to say that I had not thought of. It was fairly early on when we first had him on in this show, and I learned a lot from listening to him, and I learned a lot from him being on this show and how to do things, and so that was memorable.
Great.
The second one was, again, the first time, the aforementioned Becca Tobin, the first time we had her on, which was like, it was insane. It was insane. There was another guest on that show, another actress.
And they just couldn't compete. I mean,
she just blew it out of the water.
Yeah. The thing about Becca is that, that expression, no filter. I
None.
mean, she is maybe the only person I've ever met who actually has none whatsoever.
No fear, no filter.
No fear, no filter.
Her entire
nothing,
story was great.
ever.
She was not afraid to say whatever she wanted to say. I have been lucky enough to be a guest on Lady Gang podcast a number of times.
Yeah.
Becca's awesome. Becca's the best. And so that was a memorable episode for me. Number 3, one of my most memorable episodes was Tatum O'Neil. Who she picked out these glasses, by the way, for me. And we later, worked with her a little bit, and that's a whole different podcast altogether. But she had the stories to tell, and she was fearless, and she was somebody who were all like, well, what are we going to get with her? And she was great.
Yeah.
She was a great guest.
Another one who's just super honest about her feelings and thoughts.
Yeah.
And
just had a different path to life and way of looking at things.
Yeah.
And we talked about crushes and history of her crushes, and she dated Michael Jackson, and it was just a good show, and I remember that. The 4th most memorable show for me, which people do mention to me a lot of times, was the show I did 2 days after I was in a terrible car accident. And I just kind of rambled on, and I was in a lot of pain, and you can hear the pain I was in, and my voice changed. I don't think I ever sounded the same after that as I did before that.
Yeah.
And it was really hard to do, but I got a lot of feedback on it. So a lot of people were like, because it wasn't really necessarily about the car accident. It was more about the pain and how we process it and how we lock things away and all that. And it was just kind of me rambling, but I remember doing that. And I remember it was hard to do, but I remember that it worked. Because sometimes when you do this podcast, you're not sure it works. And the one I did a few weeks ago that I got a lot of feedback on about jealousy, that worked. And a lot of people are like, that worked. I got it. Because I never know in the moment. But that was one of them. I just kind of winged it because I couldn't even have a guest on because I just was in a lot of pain.
It's interesting how the pain got you in touch with like all kinds of pain.
Yeah, I know. So that was good. And then the other most memorable one was the one I just brought up before, the 23 questions that matter. And the reason why I bring that one up is because I've never laughed so hard in my life. Ever. And you were on that one, Keiko. And we brought out some things out of you that we did not know existed.
That's right.
It was pure lunacy.
It was.
I listened to that one probably a dozen times over because it always makes me laugh.
The most fun that I have ever had on a podcast, and I have been on
memorable.
bunches
So I'm glad that one matched up
you.
with the most listened to ones because a lot of people got to enjoy it too.
Yeah.
We have a couple more categories here, but the worst guest we've ever had on. Your opinion. Who's the worst one? Because I know mine, but let's hear yours.
Well, the worst one that I recall is was someone who's actually a very dear friend of mine. I love her, but I would never have guessed because she's so adorable. She was completely afraid of the microphone. And she sat way back in her chair and we could barely hear her. And she just...
I don't even know who you're talking about.
My friend Mira.
I don't even remember that.
Do you see? That's what I mean.
Yeah, it didn't make an impression on me, so that's not worse.
No, she's such a lovely person, and
No, I don't think that's the worst.
She shrunk up.
The Candace Bushnell one for me, she wasn't the worst guest because obviously it was good. It was just challenging. We don't like to do them over Zoom. I had to do it over Zoom. She was a little prickly, but it was okay. But that's not the worst guest. The worst guest, I don't even remember her name. All she wanted us to know was that she was beautiful. And she's not really that beautiful, but do you remember that? It was in...
You're going to have to narrow that down.
I know. We have some of them like that. It was in studio. Her co-host was on Zach's co-host. You might not even listen to it. She was brutal.
Oh, wait a second.
She's like, you don't know what life is like for me. I'm like, why? And she's like, because of the way I look. I'm like, what about it? It was insane. So maybe we buried that one.
Yeah.
I'll look it up later. I'll look up her name. It was brutal. So I can't even remember her name. There was nothing that I could say that she didn't want to bring it back to how beautiful she was. Yeah.
Was she like an exercise girl or something?
An exercise girl. That sounded degrading.
I'm sorry.
Is Jillian Michaels an exercise girl?
No.
She was a model of some kind.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, really? So it was. Don't go look that one up. I don't even know. It was the worst guest ever.
Well, I mean, what's interesting is that she felt a certain way about her looks, and she felt that she was projecting something, or that
she felt that everybody was defining her, and the answer was she was the only one defining her.
Exactly, that's it. It was her own world.
It was interesting, but
wow.
Looking back, I was like, that's weird that she thinks all they're talking about is how good looking she is, and nobody's talking about that. And really, the only one talking about that is her. Very strange episode. Don't look it up. Don't look it up. Bless her heart. We bless her and send her on her way. No friends, no enemies.
Yeah.
The guests that I have not had on this show or the shows that I want to do. Does that make sense?
The guests that you have not had on the show?
So there's 5 guests that I've not had on yet that I want to have on, or it's shows that I want to do. So like I said, slice this apple 300 different ways.
Okay.
There's still more rings on this tree I want to explore.
Since talent is my field, I will consider you putting in your order for this. So let me know.
So there's only one that I'm putting on in
I'll call them
order.
Up for
It'd
you.
be hard to get her. We've come close.
I'll try again.
Stevie Nicks.
Oh, yes.
I want you to order me up Stevie Nicks.
Okay, I will call her.
She's got stories to tell. She's got songs to sing. She's got clothes to wear.
Yeah, she's amazing.
I need Stevie Nicks on this podcast before we're done with this thing. So make that happen. That's my number one. People ask me when I do podcasts, like, who do you want to have on? Stevie Nicks. And everybody wants Stevie Nicks. She doesn't really do podcasts, but she's not touring anymore, so maybe that's it. The number 4 thing that I want to do that I haven't done, I want to do one on a singles cruise. Now, I don't want to go on a singles cruise, so I don't know how I'm going to facilitate this. I have a lot of questions.
I want to know
why you guys are on a cruise. I want to know why you're on a singles cruise. I just have so many questions for the people that are on the singles cruise.
Yep.
I want to know if there's a way I can do this without actually being on a singles cruise. So maybe we're going to have to contact a cruise company and we'll interview people on the port. Or on the dock or something.
Before they go or something?
Or after they go. What do you do? What happens on this thing? everybody's single and you're also on a cruise, like you're like captive. I just have a lot of questions. I want to explore this concept. So I'm going to have to go to a dock where they do this, and I need to set up on location and talk to singles cruise people. That's what I want. I don't want to go on it.
Okay.
I need to